Finally, me and Rotten Tomatoes agree on a horse sequel that's better than the original. That's right, this movie actually has 70% on Rotten Tomatoes and the original has 40. That blew my mind. Apparently, I'm not alone. I thought this movie was better than the original. Sue me. Alright, I'm not just saying that because I want to be different. I want to have the opposite opinion than everyone else. That's my legit opinion. If you would have asked me like a few years ago, I would have said, yeah, part one's better. Not this time. I really enjoyed this movie on this watch, and I've never hated it. I really dig it. So, yeah, plot synopsis. I'm not sure how many years after part one this takes place in. They don't really tell you, but it's probably around the same time as part one. You got Three Finger, he's still the only one alive, but now he's got this brother who has a wife and two kids that he's living with, and you even got the gas station guy from part one back as like the grandpa, I guess, and they're all killing these contestants on a survival show called The Apocalypse or something. So yeah, it's basically like Halloween Resurrection in the woods, except this movie is what Halloween Resurrection wishes it was, because this movie is actually fun. It's got gore. It's got some dark comedy. It's way better than Halloween Resurrection. And I think this movie gets way too much hate because whenever you talk to like Wrong Turn fans, if there's any, like there's not that many Wrong Turn fans that I know of, but whenever people talk about the Wrong Turn franchise, there's always just fans of the original. No one ever gives any praise to like the other sequels. They always go, they're all shit. Just watch the first one. The first one's good, but the rest are shit. I disagree. Part two is a little better, if not a lot better, in some areas than part one. And let's get into it. Let's go over the positives for this movie. You got Bear McCreary doing the score, and they don't really use too much music in the movie overall, but when they do, I like it. Bear McCreary is a kick-ass composer. He did the Child's Play remake, which is the best soundtrack and score of that entire franchise because Bear McCreary kicks ass, and I like that in this movie the score has like a country backwoods sound to it. I can't really describe it. It's kind of like western sounding a little bit. It just has that perfect sound. Like it goes with the theme of the movie, the woods, cannibal hillbillies. So Bear McCreary knocks it out of the park again. And then, of course, what this does that most sequels do is they up the gore, they up the body count, they up the insanity. The kills are just top notch. I mean, the opening kill is like the best kill in the movie, which is a bit of a negative now that I think about it. Like, you should never open up with the best kill. You should always save that somewhere in like the middle, towards the end, build up to that, kind of like in Wrong Turn 1, they had the best kill for like last. I don't think it was, maybe though, was it the last? The tree decapitation? Like, that's the best one. They built up to that. In this one, they're like, let's give you the most creative, most badass kill right up front, and then the rest will be okay or good. But it's like they give you the best one first. So maybe that's a bit of a mistake, but still, it's like as soon as this movie opens and you see that first kill, you're like, this is already better than part one because part one it opened up with the typical off-camera kills. It was just not that good. The kills weren't that great in part one, but they were still effective. Some of them. So yeah, gore and kills. I love the TV show idea. I'm glad that they didn't like cut to like their POVs a bunch, kind of like a Halloween Resurrection, where they kept cutting like back and forth between the footage. Like their cameras on their ears. Like it didn't cut back to that crap like again and again and again. But I like the idea because it's now like explained why they're there, and it's kind of ironic and funny too. Like they're in the show called Survival, and they have to survive the elements of the woods and just try to, live off the land. And it's a fake ass show, but then things turn real, and they actually legit have to try to survive. So it's pretty funny, and it just eliminates the convenience of why they're there. Like now we understand why they're there. They didn't have to like crash into each other, and, stuff like that. Like we now understand why they're there. It makes total sense. I like the TV show angle, and this movie defies expectations again and again. They kind of like flip tropes on their head. I'll get more in detail about that shit later on in my spoiler discussion, but I like some moments in this movie where it's like it takes you by surprise. And you got Henry Rollins in the movie who plays like this badass like Rambo Marine who like it legit turns into Rambo at one point. He's putting like war paint on his face and he fights back against the villains. I love that. I love when you get a character who's not just like a damsel in distress, someone who just doesn't know how to stand up for themselves and actually like fights back and puts up a hell of a fight. And I like that there's more villains now. It's not just the three anymore in part one. They like double it now. And I heard that the director wanted there to be even more than we got in this movie, but I guess budget constraints. I didn't look up the budget. I should have. But yeah, he still doubled like the family, amount of people. Like we got Three Finger back from part one. You got the gas station attendant guy, and then you got Ma and Pa, played by Ken Kersinger. He plays Pa in this movie, and then they got the two kids. So there's a lot more people here to pick off, and for them to pick off these people. So there's a lot more of a threat, and this one actually has nudity. This is almost a slasher movie, but more of crazy family genre to me. You got nudity. You didn't get that in part one, so I had to talk about that. So yeah, and this one's just more crazy. It dials it up even more. This is more like a dark comedy, especially in the third act. It gets a little bit more silly. I wish there was a little bit more of that silliness, that dark comedy throughout. But yeah, once you get towards the third act, it just gets more like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There's like a legit like Texas Chainsaw Massacre dinner scene, and it's almost shot kind of similar in one part. And yeah, it goes for it. There's like it's gross out, dark comedy. That's what they're going for. There's just all kinds of disgusting things. There's like incest. The makeup effects on the cannibals is okay. There's some effects that didn't look that good. Like I wasn't like the lip on Pa didn't look that great, but it's not the worst of the franchise. Like we haven't gotten there yet. So the effects on these cannibals is still decent. And what else? I think that's really about it. It's just I love the kills, love all the goriness and the craziness. So the negatives for the movie is that this movie, I'm not sure what the budget was, but whatever cameras they were using or whatever they did in post production, maybe to make it look this way, was it on purpose? It looks cheap. I don't know if it's the cameras, the color palette, but the movie overall just looks cheap. It just yeah, you can see the dip in quality, but it's still entertaining. So I can get over the look of the film, but I just had to point it out. Like it doesn't look like the first one at all. So maybe that will turn some people off right away when they see the look of the film. But give it a shot. It's not that bad. Don't judge a book by its cover, as they say. And the characters in this movie are, cookie cutter. Like it's every box checked. They're all like a little over the top too. You got the bitchy emo chick. You got the jock, the goofball, the guy who cheats on his girlfriend, and then the shy girl. Everything, like the slutty girl who just wants her 15 minutes of fame, like every single box is checked. And then the blonde girl dies first. But yeah, there's still, like I said, some defying expectations in the film, but this movie is also kind of a little tropey at times too. The acting is a bit of a downgrade, but I don't really care about bad acting in movies. It doesn't hurt a film, but I did notice it. I wasn't a fan of the way a lot of these like action sequences were shot. They're very choppy, and like there's a lot of cuts whenever like Henry Rollins is getting into like a little bit of a brawl. It just cuts a little too much. The camera's like constantly like swaying around. I'm not a fan of this style of like shooting action sequences. It's very almost like Bourne style. It's just like keep the camera still. It's like literally like 3 cuts per second at times, and it's like I can't stand that crap. And there's a couple of CG shots, but the first one has some CG shots too. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of CG in my gore. Like that bow and arrow kill has some CG, just like in part one. And so yeah, not a fan of that. And this movie just, I noticed on this viewing that everything's daytime. So some people might like that because it's different, but it just didn't work for me. I wish there was some night scenes, more atmosphere to the film. Because, like I said, the movie just kind of looks cheap. There's not really much atmosphere in this movie. Like the woods don't look creepy or anything. There's no real tension in the film. It's more just trying to be a gross out dark comedy. So they really don't succeed in trying to be scary. It's more just let's try to be as disgusting as we can. And that'll either work for you or not work for you. I wish there was a little bit more tension in the film. And I have one final nitpick, and that is there's really not a lot of Three Finger. Like, he's the titular character of this franchise. Like, he's the one that's in all six. Spoiler, in case you don't know. Yeah, he lives in this one too. When he shouldn't, he should be dead. But he doesn't really have much screen time in this movie. They really just give it to the new ones, and then he kind of takes a back seat. He gets, quote unquote, dispatched really early, but then he comes back at the end for the teaser at the end, like these movies always do. But yeah, there wasn't a lot of Three Finger. I didn't remember that about this movie. I wish there was more of him, and he didn't laugh once. I loved his creepy laugh in part one, and this one he doesn't laugh at all until the credits start rolling. And I read that was Joe Lynch doing ADR because the actor couldn't do the laugh properly. So, yeah, that was a bit of a bummer. So, final thoughts: this is not like the first one, so just know that going in. This is not going for the thrills that the first one was going for. This is up in the body count, up in the gore, just stereotypical characters getting picked off one by one in gory, gruesome ways. It's way more of a dark comedy and just more insane than the first one. It's going for the gross out factor, and it's either going to work for you or it's not. But for me, it worked almost 100%. So when it comes to Wrong Turn 2, definitely consider giving this one a shot. Watch it, go out, and buy it. Alright, time for the spoiler discussion. I didn't mention that this is from the writers of Candyman 3, Day of the Dead. That blew my mind, because that movie is dog shit. Alright, and this movie has two actors from Final Destination 3, and that actor's name is Texas Battle. That's probably a fake name. And so, I think we got the main girl in this movie, who ends up being the final girl. She's one of the hitchhikers in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, and I think she was in like Blair Witch 2 and some other stuff. She's almost like a scream queen. She's been in quite a few horror movies. And then the Latina chick, she was in Hills Have Eyes 2 and The Collector. So there's lots of horror alumni in this film. There's a lot of horror movie actors in here. And then you got Henry Rollins too. So, all right. And also, in the beginning of this movie, when this chick's like driving down the road in her like Mustang, she's on the phone. I was listening to the voice on that phone, and I was like, "That sounds very familiar. Who is that?" And I was like, "That sounds almost like Patton Oswalt." And then when the credits rolled at the end, it said Patton Oswalt was a voice on the phone, the comedian. Like, he's in this movie. That blew my mind. So yeah, so this movie opens up with this chick. She's driving down the road, and she makes a wrong turn. That's why it's called Wrong Turn. And then, she hits the guy, she gets out, she's like trying to help, so she's a nice person. I would have just kept driving if it was me personally. But she gets out of the car, she gets like her jaw ripped off, or eaten off in this case, and then she gets split right down the middle. Awesome. Best kill in the movie. The body just looks almost real. Like the way they're taking both pieces down the road just looks fantastic. All the guts hit the ground. But, she deserved it for driving the Mustang. I'm a Camaro guy, so. And then we get basically Dangertainment from Halloween Resurrection. We got Dangertainment, but in the woods, and it's a typical, like, phony, supposed to be real reality TV show, and it's so fake that even the fireplace is fake. You think it's like a real log fire, but then they, like, hit a button and the fire goes away. Everything about this show is fake, but it's about to get real. And so then this editor guy, he's the first one to get killed, and he's like killed while he's taking a piss, and like he gets scalped after his throat gets slit, and then Three Finger takes his scalp and like wears it as a toupee later on, which I thought was pretty funny. And then there's this scene where the director in the movie, he's like trying to like create like a porno or something, and the jock, he won't have sex with the girl, so that was kind of defying expectations. You think he's like the typical horny jock, but he's like, no, I got a family that's gonna watch this. I can't do this. Like, I like that. I like that he's a good guy. He's trying to help. He's trying to be he's a good person. But I like that there's like porno music playing over that scene when she's like stripping down, getting in the water. Like, if you listen to the music again, it almost sounds like a porno music. So, the killers in this movie have very rusty aim. In part one, they were accurate as hell. And in this one, You get like 2 arrows that miss Henry Rollins, and then the axe misses him, and then when he throws his knife, he actually hits Three Finger from like almost 100 yards away. So it's like his aim's on point. Their aim is rusty as hell. But then they capture him, and it's just movie plot conveniences, why they keep them alive longer than they should. But that was in part one, so it's not like this is the first one to do it. I complained about it there, so it's only fair that I complain about it here. Why do they do that? Why are they keeping Henry Rollins alive, hanging him up, and then even towards the end, they keep Texas Battle and the goth emo girl alive all night long for their like Texas Chainsaw Massacre dinner? Why? They're killing everybody else off right away, but then they want to just fuck with these people. I guess they're just getting off on it. It's funny to them, maybe. I don't know. And so, yeah, then, the girlfriend catches her boyfriend cheating on her, and then she gets killed. Like, they bump into this house, and for some reason, they never found this house when they're setting up like 30 cameras throughout these woods. Like, I don't know how they were even able to set up 30 different cameras throughout the woods and all these different like traps for the game without ever getting caught by the family. Like, they never bumped into them until now. They've been living in these woods for years. Like, their house is right over there. So it's not like they just moved into this area. No, they've been there all along. So it's like, again, a convenience. Like, realistically, I think they would have gotten killed before they were even able to set up the game. But whatever. So you gotta look past that. So they get in the house, they see a pregnant woman giving birth to a monstrosity, and then that baby ends up, I think, being the kid in part 3. And so they're running out of the house, and then all of a sudden this axe just hits her right in the freaking head, and she just hits the ground, and they put her body on the hood of the truck like she's like a deer. Awesome. Awesome. It's like a Marion Crane situation, Psycho or A Nightmare on Elm Street. Like the girl who you think is going to make it to the end because she's the typical shy girl, the virgin, the one who won't put out. Like she's the one that dies first. Not really, but like first in this group of people, after the opening. So I love that. Define expectations. So after that, we see Three Finger wearing a scalp. I already talked about that. And so then I like that they're actually like taking family photos. This crazy cannibal family, they actually have photos of themselves all over the house. I just love that they're like living life normally in the woods. Like they're not ashamed of the way they look. Like they actually have pictures up all over the walls. And I love that what was I gonna say? That the guy from part 1, the gas station attendant. I love that he's still drinking Pepto Bismol in this movie. I love it. It's just continuity. I love that. They watched the first one, they wrote that down, and they kept it in this movie. Just love it. You still got that one tooth. And so then, after the final girl dies, we got this whole, like, jerk off session. This guy's, like, jerking off to, like, Crystal Lowe. She's, like, stripping on the, not beach, what would you call it? Creek area? I don't know. But, the sister gets jealous, and she starts, like, hitting him over the head, and then she like stabs Crystal Lowe in like a jealous rage, and she's like hacking at her back so many times that you can see like her spine exposed. Awesome. So yeah, and then she like takes her scalp too, and then later on there's like this trap they're setting up where they think like Crystal's character Elena, that's her name. They think Elena's getting raped because she's like wearing her shoes and her freaking head. Awesome, freaking fantastic. It's just going for broke. It's nuts. And so, yeah, Rollins, his character, I don't think they ever really say his name much. But Henry, his character, he breaks loose and he blows up the gas station guy with a stick of dynamite, and he shoots Three Finger away with a shotgun. And we actually see the exit wound. It goes through his stomach and blows a hole out his back, and he's still alive at the end of the movie. Bullshit. Bullshit. All right, that end teaser was just forced. All right, but it's just another trope that they had to, they had to play by the rule book. Right? We gotta have it. You gotta check that box, and I can't stand it. But what I love about this movie too is, again, define expectations. Like after he shoots Three Finger, it like zooms in on his face and you think he's gonna have like a Bruce Campbell groovy moment where like he like says a one-liner, because they linger on his face for a few seconds. You're like, all right, he's gonna say something. He's gonna say a one-liner, and he doesn't say anything. And then later, when he blows up the gas station, Pepto Bismol guy, he says a one-liner after that kill, and I just thought that was funny.
Say hello to the missus for me.
So then they're all like around a fire, they're eating a barbecue, and they find out that they're eating Kimberly's leg because of the tattoo. So they start like puking and shit, and that's what, helps them believe this girl's story when she comes by telling them what happened. They don't believe her at first because of the show. They think it's part of the game, but then they see the leg and they realize they've been eating Kimberly. Great stuff. And so, so yeah, then we get the whole like Rambo montage gearing up scene with Henry's character. Just very silly and typical of 80s like action movies. This movie's paying tribute to 80s horror and action, but shot like a modern day action movie. All the cuts and shit. I wasn't a fan of that. And I love that the cannibals have like this father son moment when they string up the Jonesy Amber character. They're like up in the air, hung upside down, and the father's like got this bow and arrow, and then he looks over at his son. He's like, "No, you should do this, son. Like, I'm gonna teach you." There's like having this little bonding moment, and then the arrow goes like right through both of their eyes. So it's like a callback to part one with the cop character, but in this one we get two with the arrow, and it's a CGI shot, and I think they linger on it for just a little too long, like an extra second. It's like 2-3 whole seconds. It should have been like a half a second, just right through, cut away, come back to the practical effect. They linger on that CG arrow shot a little too long. So they get to the factory, and we get our typical full moon shot that we always get in horror movies. And when Henry goes in there, by the time he actually reaches, Texas and the final girl, we see a sunrise shot. So it took him all night to find them in that small factory. How big is this place? I don't get that at all. Like, all night went by for them in there. What the hell took them so long to get to them? All right, so yeah. I love that they find this like little girl's corpse in like a cabinet or something, like some kind of locker, and she basically starved to death. She was too scared to like leave. And then we see that same corpse. I swear to God, it's the same corpse. Maybe they didn't have a budget for two corpses, so they just took the other one from the other scene. They threw it, because when we see this cage in the a couple moments later with the final girl, when she's in the cage to the left, you can see the same corpse that was upstairs. So was it the same corpse? Like, was it supposed to be? I don't get, like, they're just too cheap to build two different dummies. I don't know. Why does Henry like let the blood trickle down his face? Like, he's like trying to be so badass. He like cuts his arm to create like a breadcrumb trail of his blood on the ground, so, like, to lure them towards him, so he can shoot them with a bow and arrow and blow up the brother and sister. Which I like that. 2 for 1, blows both of those little fuckers up. He's looking up and he's just letting all the blood trickle down his face. He just keeps like flinching. He's like, dude, just get the fuck out of the way. Like, who are you trying to like impress? There's no one watching you right now. No one's like, oh man, you're so badass. Just letting that blood trickle on your face. And we get the whole like Texas Chainsaw Massacre dinner scene, and then I love that she's like, I hope you fucking choke. It's kind of like Day of the Dead. Choke on it. And I love that they have like a caveman language. They're just grunting at each other like, bleh, bleh. And then like they understand each other. It's like she goes and gets him like a beer or something. Like, I understand what you want, honey. They're just like grunting to each other. It's freaking hysterical. And so yeah, and after all that, so what I don't like, this could have been written so much better, but it's a little lazy if I'm being honest. Like, this character's so badass, he would not go out this way. So Henry, he just lets himself get killed. Like, he frees both of them, and he's like, all right, go follow me, and he gets an arrow through his back, and instead of like turning around and like trying to like duck and just hurry out of the place with Texas, he just like stumbles for a bit, and he like goes back to what he was saying, like nothing happened. He was like shaking it off, like, all right, what was I saying? Oh yeah, all right, go find Nina. And then like another arrow hits him again. It's like, dude, why are you just standing there? It makes no sense. It's ridiculous. And he just turns around, he like breaks it. He's again like trying to prove how badass he is. It's like, break it. He's like, is that all you got, pussy? And then the chick runs in and she's like swinging this thing for like 5 whole seconds. And he's just letting it happen. He's just staring at her. And she throws the thing. It's got like it's like razor blades on the chain or some shit. Wraps around his throat and then like cuts his throat open. And he's like, fuck you. Like, again, like even on his dying breath, he's like trying to be a badass. Like, fuck you. You can't kill me. It was stupid. Like, really, come on. Like, you're going to let 2 arrows hit you and not even like try to dodge it. Like, where's your survival instincts, buddy? That was just a little ridiculous, I have to admit. All right. And also ridiculous that it took him like 12 hours to find them in that factory because of the moonshot and then the sunrise. Like, they let you know that it's been all fucking night. And honestly, I just think it's because they couldn't afford night shooting. Like, there's not a single scene in this entire movie that's at night. The only thing that's night is the moonshot, and that's it. The third act is in a factory, so you wouldn't even know if it's day or night with those scenes, you know? So, anyways, yeah, and the black guy lives. That's another defying expectations. Usually the black guy dies first, and this one, the black guy lives because Nina, she comes back to help him. You know, she has this moment like, fuck, do I just keep running or do I go back and save the day? She goes back and pushes both of them right into like the meat grinder thing. And there's some CG shots in there, but then they turn into chunks. Chunks are just flying out. Awesome. So yeah, and then we get the end teaser with the baby being fed a finger, and the baby also has 3 fingers like his daddy, so that's cute. And then the 3-finger baby is a grown kid in the 3rd movie, from my memory. And yeah, so that's the end of the movie. The Hockey Mask Award for Best Character is, of course, Henry Rollins. His character, whatever his name is, because he's badass. He kind of acts a little too tough at times, a little too stupid, especially when he dies at the end. But still, I love his character because he's a badass. And the Hanky Award for Worst Character in this movie will be Jonesy, because he's the fast-talking goofball, constantly horny, just talking way too much. Just shut up. Clap Award for Best Scene in this movie will go to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre dinner scene, because it's just gruesome, gory, disgusting. And I love the fact that they're praying at the dinner table like they're a good Christian family. And the hottest chick in this movie will be Nina, the final girl, the emo chick, who's a little bit of a bitch at the beginning, but she redeems herself in the end. And the Mr. Hat Award for Best Kill in this movie is Kimberly, the opening kill, the chick who gets split right down the middle after getting her jaw eaten off. And the Mr. Twig Award for lamest kill will go to Neil, the editor of the show, who gets his throat slit and scalped and we see it through blurry like footage. It's kind of hard to see what's really going on, so it's not that good looking of a kill. It's just lame compared to everything else in the film. So there you go. Those are my thoughts on Wrong Turn 2. What did you think about this movie? Let me know in the comments below where you put it in your franchise ranking. Are you like me? How many people out there are like me and think it's better than the original? Because I think I might be alone on that one. Except for Rotten Tomatoes, they agree with me. So there you go. Let me know. As always, if you like what you see here, you can hit this like button and become a subscriber today just by clicking on my cartoon face in about 5 seconds. And until next time, auf Wiedersehen.